I have great pleasure in inviting Mr. Naveen Jindal, the founding Chancellor of O.P. Jindal Global University, to come to the dais. The Capital Foundation Society is presenting the Capital Foundation Justice P. N. Bhagwati Award to Mr. Naveen Jindal in recognition of his outstanding contribution to legal education and corporate philanthropy. Mr. Jindal is the founding Chancellor of O.P. Jindal Global University. He is the Member of Parliament, the Chairman and Managing Director of Jindal Steel and Power Limited, and a sports enthusiast. The O.P. Jindal Global University, which he founded, has at present 4 schools, and this award is being given in recognition of his outstanding contribution to legal education from 2 professors, one from Harvard and another from Yale. Professor Stephen Marks, who is a professor at Harvard University and is also the member of the governing body of O.P. Jindal Global University, says, and I quote, "Friends of India, and I certainly count myself among them, have lamented with enlightened Indians the gap between India's leadership in legislation and judicial review on the one hand and the quality of legal education in India on the other. The best of India's young jurists have reached the summits of legal education outside of India. However, this gap is closing, and one of the most outstanding agents of this change has been Mr. Naveen Jindal and his funding of the Jindal Global Law School. Naveen Jindal has seen the future and has understood how a significant investment in legal education through JGLS will pay great dividends for India and the world. Through this extraordinary and inspired act of corporate philanthropy, Mr. Jindal threw down the gauntlet for other industrialists to make similar philanthropic contribution to legal education. I hope they will," unquote. Professor Peter Schuck, a professor of law at Yale Law School and chair of the International Board of Advisors of Jindal Global Law School, has said, "Naveen Jindal is an institution builder and pioneering figure in the new India. The future generations will flourish through his generosity, and vision will be his greatest legacy and gift to his country," unquote. Thank you.
Friends, good evening to all of you. You are all serious people, you are not smiling. Capital Foundation make the people happy, I think. Friends, first of all, I would like to greet Honorable Sri Kapil Sibal, Minister for HRD and Communication, Honorable Sri Salman Khurshid ji, the Honorable Sri Justice Altmas Kabir ji, and he defied the empowerment beautifully, and the Honorable General Singh ji, my friend, and his father also is a soldier, he is sitting here, the Honorable General Singh ji and his father, Dr. Sengupta and Sri Parikh, and my friend Dr. Vinod Shetty, and all of you friends, my greetings. Well, I am indeed delighted. They have given me 30 minutes. I hope you will be with me for 30 minutes. And I am going to have about 20-25 minutes so that you can ask some questions also. Okay? Okay? Suits you? Yes or no? Okay. I am indeed delighted to give the Capital Foundation annual lecture and participate in the Capital Foundation Award ceremony in this beautiful environment of intellectual and political and judicial and every field, particularly on the occasion of the 97th birthday of Justice Sri V.R. Krishnaiah. I have great respect for Justice Krishnaiah for his unique services in multiple fields of judiciary, political system, social system, and above all, human upliftment of the actions. I congratulate General J.J. Singh ji for getting the Capital Foundation National Award, Sri Kapil Sibal and Sri Salman Khurshid ji for getting the Justice V.K. Krishnaiah Award, and Sri Naveen Jindal and Dr. Arun Mohan for getting the Justice P. N. Bhagwati Award, and the other award winners. My hearty congratulations. The Capital Foundation Society has a mission of bringing the learning and deliberate articulate public opinion on vital issues. I understand it promotes free flow of information and ideas from diverse sources leading to decision making. My greetings to all the participants of this function, friends. Let me share a few thoughts in the Capital Foundation annual lecture with the title Empowering 3 Billion. The focus of my discussion will be towards how to empower nearly half the population of the world, not India. India, 3 billion, that would be terrible to hold 3 billion in India. How to empower nearly half the population of the world who need capacity building to perform and to lead a good life. In India itself, we have 400 million people who need to be lifted up towards a better life. I suggest that this important audience may carefully study the suggestion and transform into action in whatever role you are performing, friends. Let us first study the global challenges which are faced by the nations of the world. It's not only India, nations of the world. Today, the challenges of the world at many places are poverty, illiteracy, safe drinking water, clean and green energy, equitable distribution of resources, quality education with values for all, and overcoming societal imbalances, curing diseases, quality health care for all the good living conditions. Individual nations are working to find a solution to these challenges. However, we are clearly witnessing that challenges faced by the nation are not only of their making, or the solution amenable only by the individual nations. There are many international dimensions for the cause and solution. Hence, working for solution is a collective responsibility of global community. Also, when nations start working on the common enemies of illiteracy, poor health care, etc., their tendency to focus on national, regional, and global peace with better mutual trust is enabled. The global challenge takes various manifestations based on the local dynamics, which are interconnected on various factors. Let us look at the dynamics of these manifestations. The world today is integrally, as you all know, is integrally connected through 4 rapid connectivities. They are environment, people, economy, and ideas. We all know that global warming and climate change are no longer problems of individual nation, they are planetary problems. In the present time, a single product may be made out of the components sourced from multiple continents and provide services to market far from their place of origin. We also saw how the economic turbulence originating in any part of the globe has its dynamics in the whole world. It's happening now. The world today is concerned about the growing inflationary pressure, and Saab himself talking, inflationary pressure and recessions and potential fall in growth rates affecting valuable efforts on development. We witnessed how a volcanic eruption in an island country in Europe brought the entire airline industry and more than 5,000 commercial flights to a halt, and the recent earthquake followed by tsunami has changed the concept of the safety and the security of an island nation. At the same time, the advances in transportation has progressively made movement of people across the nations and regions more feasible. This has led to the globalization of expertise and talents which can flow seamlessly from one nation to another. This also has led to the globalization of human diseases, the most recent instance being a different kind of which rapidly spread across the globe. An invention made today somewhere takes no time to find its market thousands of miles away. The expansion of the information communication technology and the convergence of technological tools are structuring new world knowledge where problems of one part of the world can be solved by multiple experts based on different points of the globe. Seamless flow of information and people also means that local or regional resources will invariably gain global prominence, and unaddressed problems including poverty can mutilate rapidly into multiple conflicts internationally and global terrorism, which we are already witnessing. The flow of ideas has also had to be increasing importance of global human rights and propagation of the idea of democracy. Let me recall an experience. When I was traveling in an aircraft to USA, I was told that much of its controls, flight control, were software driven and most probably developed in India. When I presented my credit card, I was told that it was being processed in the back-end server located in Mauritius. When I walked into the multinational software company in Bangalore, I was fascinated to find that it truly presented a multicultural environment. A software developer from China, working under a project leader from Korea, working with a software engineer from India, and a hardware architect from the US, and the communication expert from the Germany were all working together to solve the banking problem in Australia. When I see all of them working together like one family, forgetting about the culture from which country they came to, which language they speak, I feel that the only hope for such borderless interaction to continue is to inculcate the spirit of borderlessness in every human activity on our planet Earth. I had detailed discussion many educational institutions across the world and with many citizens in India and abroad from multiple organizations and disciplines. The profile was evolved. I have evolved a profile, particularly after discussion with my research students in Gatton College of Business and Economics, Lexington, USA, and IIM Ahmedabad. I am happy to present to you the distinctive profile for the nations of the world, not nation of the world, nations of the world in 2030, what it should be. Distinctive profile for the nations of the world in 2030 we have evolved. Let me present to you this visualization. Number one, a world of nations where the divide between the rural and urban, rich and the poor, developed and developing has narrowed down. A world of nation where there is an equitable distribution and adequate access to energy and quality water. A world where competencies of each nation are identified. Missions synergizing the core competencies of different nations lead to the economic advantage and faster development for all the societies. A world of nation where all the students of all societies are imparted education with value system. A world of nation where the affordable quality health care is available to all. A world of nation where the governance is responsive, transparent, and corruption-free. A world of nation where crimes against women and children are absent, none in the society feels alienated. A world in which every nation is able to give a clean, green environment to all its citizens. A world that's prosperous, healthy, secure, devoid of terrorism, peaceful and happy, and continues with a sustainable growth path. a world of nations with creative leadership who ensure effective mechanism to resolve conflicts between the nation and societies in a timely manner, keeping overall peace and prosperity of the world as a goal. Now, when we looked at it with my student researchers, I found there are two possible solutions. There are two possible solutions for achieving this Vision 2030. The first solution seems to be the conventional approach which has been followed so far across the world. It starts with working for the national prosperity and peace within the local boundaries and perspectives, hoping that over a long term it would percolate into regional prosperity and peace, ultimately may lead to prosperity and peace at the global level. The collective experience across the world highlights that this solution has not yielded the desired results in the past, and with the globalized world in its efficacy in bringing global prosperity and peace in the future is uncertain. The second solution which we are promoting would be looking for a global prosperity and peace as the overall objective of the world, thereby percolating to achieve regional prosperity and peace, which will ultimately ensure that the national prosperity and peace of the participating nation. It is all about making a study with reference to global context and finding how every nation can align towards the global missions. It has also to be remembered that national mission inspire the citizen. This spirit from it is directed towards the globally important missions also. Now we need out-of-box ideas. Today let me discuss one of the visions in detail with all of you, which is on how to reduce the rural and urban divide across the world. Friends, more than 3 billion people live in the rural regions of the world, and empowerment of these 3 billion, which is my topic today and will be the basis of our discussion further. The empowerment of rural regions of the world is critically important from the perspective of the inclusive development and sustained peace and shared prosperity of the world. The untapped potential rural population and talent will be a great treasure. Even the most developed nation in the world witness the rural-urban divide. For instance, when I was in Kentucky last year in USA, I witnessed how the rural eastern Kentucky still in the need for societal and economic development. Earlier this year, when I visited Australia, I came across many cases where the government and other institutions were working towards the welfare of the native population of the region, who are still backward. Of course, when it comes to the developing and the underdeveloped world, the majority of the population lives in these rural areas, which necessitate the special focus on them. In the absence of a concrete action driven by the need of the education, healthcare, and better income, the rural population is migrating to the urban areas with a hope to get a better chance to opportunities, often meeting with a despair. This further contributes to the urban poverty as well as leading to the stresses and societal turbulence. The rural areas of the world occupy a position where there are unharnessed resources and potential. They have youth and traditional skills. They have to be nurtured into a value adding using the technology. How can such a mission of empowering 3 billion people be realized? It would be indeed require out-of-box thinking and ideas previously unconceived. We would need to evolve a sustainable development system which being in a sustainability and empowerment together and deliver in an entrepreneurial manner. That is what is called Pura and Pura activated. The need of the hour is the evolution of a sustainable system which acts as enablers and bring inclusive growth and integrated development of the nations of the world. Now I am going to talk to you the Pura And what does it mean? The villages must be connected within themselves and with the main towns and metros through by good roads and wherever needed by railway lines. They must have other infrastructure like schools, colleges, hospitals, and amenities for the local population, and this is what is called physically connected. In the emerging knowledge era, the native knowledge has to be preserved and enhanced with the latest tools of technology, training, and research. The villages have to have access to the good education from the best teachers wherever they are, must have the benefit of good medical treatment, and must have a latest information on their pursuing like agriculture, fishery, horticulture, and food processing. That means they have to have a electronic connectivity. Once the physical and electronic connectivity are enabled in the villages, the knowledge connectivity is enabled that can facilitate the ability to increase the productivity, the utilization of the spare time, awareness of health welfare, ensuring a market for product, increasing the quality conscious, interacting with various people, getting the best equipment, increasing transparency. Also in general is called knowledge connectivity. Once three connectivities, that is physical, electronic, and knowledge connectivity are ensured, they facilitate the capacity building, what is called economic connectivity. When we provide urban amenities to rural areas, Pura, we can lead to upliftment of rural areas, we can attract the investors, we can introduce effectively useful systems like rural PPOs, microfinances, and also small-scale industries. The number of Pura for the whole of India is estimated to be 7,000, covering 600,000 villages where 750 million people live. Similarly, about 30,000 Pura complexes would be required to convert the 3 billion rural population in the world into a vibrant economic zone and bringing sustainable development rural areas. There are operational Puras in India initiated by many educational, healthcare institution, industry and institution. Government of India is already moving ahead with the implementation of Pura in experimental basis in number of states across the several districts of India. Let me present a platform which is a unique enterprise-driven model of sustainable welfare model through the idea of Pura Activated. The essence of Pura Activated is the belief that Pura enterprises of the next generation need to be think of its relationship, workforce and beyond bring the provider of mere livelihood. The Pura Activated envisages in overall integral development of the rural population. There are two types I would like to present. One is called resource entrepreneurs, and the second one is resource entrepreneurs. The second one is social entrepreneurs. The next category of entrepreneurs will work closely with the social entrepreneurs. Now these two, the entrepreneurs of Pura Activated would work in a close synchronization and integration with the help of local Pura champions who may be an institution or an organization of repute. They will be partners with the government, local administration and Panchayat Raj and all, etc. The enterprises network of Pura Activated has to be evolved with a technical collaboration from the multi-dimensional array of technological and managerial institutions. Similarly, enterprises from different parts of the world can be partners to the Pura Activated by acting and equity investors, exploring and also facilitating the market linkages and providing a technological platform, the best practices and also innovative solution to production challenges. Now friends, in this way, enterprises academic institution and business unit from across the world can share their core competencies to harness the resources of untapped so far rural and urban regions. Such a collaborative platform for 600 villages, an example, covering 750 million citizens in India alone, have about $200 billion the market in India, which can harness an agrarian economy leading to a mutual benefits. With about 3 billion people living in rural areas, with this global development system can be expanded in all the countries. I am putting forward this model to this community of innovators in business, engineering, law, medicine, and various luminaries who also can a global concern and endowed with the proven world-class knowledge, so that you all can resolve an idea and be a partner to empower 3 billion people, realize the global vision 2030, and bring global prosperity and happening in peace. But we need most importance of leaders. We need for such type of mission, we need a new type of leaders. And what are the qualities of leadership we need? Friends, I have seen three dreams which have taken shape as a vision, mission, and realization. One is space program of ISRO, I worked with them. And another is Agni program of DRDO, Research and Development Organization. And PURA, providing urban amenities rural area. Of course, these three programs can succeed in the midst of many challenges and problems. I have worked in all these three areas. I would like to convey to you, all of you friends, what I have learned on the leadership from these three programs. Number one, leader must have a vision. Leader must have a passion to accomplish the mission. Number two. Number three, leader must be able to travel into an unexplored path. Leader must know how to manage the success and failure. And it's easy to manage a success. How do you manage the failure? Take the response. Leader should take the responsibility for the failure. Leader must have the courage to take the decision. Leader should have a nobility in management. And every action of the leader should be transparent. Leader should work with integrity and succeed with integrity. You know, I was talking to Mussoorie IAS officers. I gave a oath, I will work with integrity and succeed with integrity. The voice was very good, decibel, high decibel, I will work with integrity. When I said succeed with integrity, then the voice went low. So it looks to me one of the greatest quality we need in this decade. We have to work with integrity and succeed with integrity. For the success of the program Vision 2030, it is essential to have creative leaders. Creative leadership means exercising the vision to change the traditional role from the commander to the coach. You will be a coach or she will be a coach, manager to mentor, from director to delegator, and from one who demands the respect to one who facilitates self-respect. For enhancing enterprise value, we need the large number of creative leaders in our country or in the world. So at this stage, let me recall Maharishi Patanjali message given 2,500 years ago. He said, when you, what I am reading is a Patanjali's, Maharishi Patanjali's. When you are inspired by some great purpose, some extraordinary project, all your thoughts break their bounds. Your mind transcends limitations. Your consciousness expands in every direction. And you find yourself in a new, great and wonderful world. Dormant forces, faculties and talents come active, and you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamt of yourself to be 2,500 years ago, your saint said. Once again, let me congratulate all the award winners of Capital Foundation Award winners, and my greetings and best wishes to all the members for the success in their mission of promoting excellence in the public life. May God bless you all, friends.